Soundstripe.
Good evening, y'all. This is the Hillbilly Think Tank with me, Spencer Keck. I am a candidate for Magistrate here in Hardin County District 3. I'm also a veteran, combat veteran, independent duty corpsman, former VA employee, current public school teacher. And y'all, I'm here today to talk about Nero fiddling while Rome is burning. It's right in line with all ballroom and ballyhoo. So y'all, let's get straight into it. Do y'all remember that story of Nero fiddling while Rome burned? Well, I sure do. So again, y'all, like I said, welcome back. I am the educated hillbilly here at the Hillbilly Think Tank. No, that's not an oxymoron. There have been educated, erudite, emancipated hillbillies and them here hills ever since Daniel Boone and my kith and kin came through the Cumberland Gap. I am one of the Cumberland Gap originals. So, retired military, I am. And we're here to talk about what this is doing to us, to our military, to our veterans, to our community of farmers, teachers, factory workers. Can we handle it anymore? How much more can we take? So, I'm coming to you today from Tunnel Hills here in Hardin County, Kentucky, where regular people wake up every single morning, check their bank accounts, go to work, pay their bills, and try to make life a little better for their kids. That's what this county is about. And that's what this district is about. And like I've said before, all of that should help us with our life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Anything that detracts from that, we have got to throw it out. So today and yesterday, we've had quite a bit of news to cover, but this is June 5th, and I want to talk to you about a word. Just one word, and that word is ballroom. Because the President of the United States, Captain Bone Spurs, Diaper Don, has spent more time talking about this ballroom, more energy, more enthusiasm, and more public attention than he has spent on negotiating a real peace plan with Iran. Than he has spent admitting the affordability crisis is crushing the families of this county, and more than his Justice Department has been able to spend successfully convicting a single one of the political enemies he publicly vowed to destroy. Ballroom. He has used that word more than he has used the word democracy. Let that sit with you for a second. Now, here we are, segment one. The builder in chief, he calls himself. $377 million for a dance floor. Are we still in the age of disco? Here's what we know. Since returning to the White House in January 2025, President Trump, old Captain Bone Spurs, who calls himself, and I want you to hear this directly, the builder in chief, has embarked on the most expensive White House renovation in American history. He tore down the East Wing. He paved over the Rose Garden and turned it into a stone patio he calls the Rose Garden Club. He put up giant gold embroidered decorations in the Oval Office. He erected new flagpoles. He gave himself a roof tour with reporters. And at the center of it all, the crown jewel is a brand new 90,000 square foot ballroom to be built on the grounds of the White House, currently projected at somewhere between 200 million and 400 million. The administration its own budget puts the White House renovations this year at 377 million, with another 174 million requested for next year. That is 866% increase from what was spent on the White House maintenance in 2025. Let me repeat that again, 866%. Now they say that most of the money comes from donors. Fine. Let's take a look at that at face value for a moment. You know, we're living in a country where private donors, corporate donors, many of them tech executives who later benefited from White House access, are funding the construction of a luxury ballroom inside the executive residence. Trump said himself, I always said I was going to do something about the ballroom because they should have one. They should have one, really. Meanwhile, here in Hardin County, we've got families buying hamburger helper and canned sardines because they're stretching every dollar. We've got borrowers falling behind on car payments and student loans. We've got people using buy now, pay later apps just to cover rent. Blood plasma sales are booming. And not because people want to, but because they're trying to put food on the table. But the man in charge says the answer to that problem is more ballroom. He says he's a builder at heart. And I'll give him that. He just isn't building anything you will ever set foot in or that I will ever set foot in. Which brings us to segment 2. Board Now, Iran Peace, and the Art of Not Caring. Now, before we go on to this next segment, let's just take a little gander at what historically it looks like when we have a leader that is more worried about his theatrics than he is about the people he's supposed to rule or take care of. And we've got them in history.
Look what I created!
Look at my ballroom.
My robe of grief. Top knot, liar. History will judge my song, Petronius. Will it be great enough to match the occasion? I'm seized with a sudden fear that it will not be great enough.
You will be worthy of the spectacle, as the spectacle is worthy of you.
You encourage me, Petronius. But I'm aware that I must compete with those who sang of the burning of Troy. My song must be greater, just as Rome is greater than Troy. Silence, ye spears! Be still, ye hurtling stars! Open wide vaulted skies above.
Oh, look at my ballroom. Oh, look at my ballroom. So, we've seen this before. Now, straight from the horse's mouth, what does he say about how we feel about the affordability crisis? Is it a real thing? Or is it something that we're just, making up because, he's got a great economy?
I want to talk about the economy, sir, here at home. And I wonder what grade you would give
A
your
plus.
economy. A plus.
Yeah, A plus, 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 plus. But many Americans strongly disagree. A recent CBS News YouGov poll found 60% believe the president makes things sound better than they really are when it comes to prices and inflation. 27% said he's right on point. 13% feel he paints a gloomier economic picture than what's really happening. Let's go to CNN senior White House reporter Kevin Liptak.
So that poll was from 5 months ago. They have gotten even worse since then. So he says he's got an A++. Would you agree? Would you give him an A++ for our affordability in this economy? I know that that's not what I'm given, but maybe you would. Let me know. Give me a call. 606-253-9885. That is the line for the show. If you want to give me a call, it's only open for this show. But what else does he say? Do we have any concerns that he needs to be concerned with?
Not to the insurance
So right now,
companies.
people are buying their holiday presents. They're planning.
Look, don't be dramatic.
No.
Don't be dramatic.
They're planning their
what I
budgets
want
for
to
next
do.
year,
Here's what I
Mr.
want.
President.
I know, and what I want to do to the people, not to the insurance
right
company.
So he just poo-pooed our concerns about the affordability crisis. He's calling her dramatic for talking about the affordability crisis that every single one of us is feeling, but I guess we really don't feel it. It's just our imagination. It's just your imagination. It's just your imagination. I don't know. If he says it enough times, I guess we'll believe it. We can be gaslit. It's obvious. Is his gaslighting still working? That's my question.
With affordability a top concern, of course, for many, many Americans, new numbers reveal more people are digging into their savings and falling behind on low payments as they try to keep up. Let's bring in former Treasury official, Morning Joe economic analyst Steve Ratner back with charts this morning, looking at how Americans are trying to navigate all of this. Steve, good morning. So let's just start by setting the stage. As you say, American savings really under pressure right now.
Yeah, Willie, look, savings is obviously of critical importance to Americans. It's how you pay for future obligations, education, houses, whatever. And so let's look at what's been happening to the savings rates of Americans as they face this affordability problem, the pressure of inflation on their ability to maintain their living standards and so forth. So this is personal savings rate, how much of people's after-tax income they put away for these other kinds of expenses that may come along. Back in the 1970s, it averaged 12.2% of after-tax income. In the 90s, 7.2%. In the 2000s, 4.2%. And now, after a steady decline, we are at 2.6%. So Americans are at pretty rock bottom of the amount they're willing to save.
So I know that I feel the exact same way. That's the outlook that I see for my economy. All right, before I go to the next segment, I got Tom Armstrong on here. Tom, love your comments. If I personally want more ballroom, I'll wear a kilt. Tom, I think it is about time for me to buy a kilt so I can say that's why I'm wearing it. You just inspired me, Tom. I think that will go great with my hiking outfit. Tom also says A++ in inverse world, maybe. In my world, F-. Totally agree with you. Anybody else that wants to post a comment, going ahead. We'll come back and look at more of them. If you want to give me a call, 606-253-9885. Let me know how this economy is sitting with you. And is it really going great? Is the ballroom helping out your economy? I know it's not helping out mine, that's for sure. All right, so we know that this White House has embarked on the most expensive White House renovation, like I said, in American history, tore down that East Wing. So now let's talk about the other thing that this builder in chief is doing for us. We are looking at not just the fact that all he can talk about is ballroom, far more than democracy. How many times have you heard him talk about American democracy, about how great democracy is, how important it is that we have a stable democracy? And how often has he lauded other leaders of our democracy and republic? No, he is the greatest leader we've ever had. He's the best builder we've ever had. He's the best interior decorator that we're ever going to have in our history, And if you know anything about history, when Abraham Lincoln was in office, his wife, Mary Todd, caused quite a, ballyhoo, I guess you could say, because she decided to redecorate the White House during the Civil War. So you can imagine that went over like a fart in a Baptist church. Didn't go over quite well. But this man, he's gone past anything that Mary Todd ever even dreamed of when it comes to, just complete grift. Mary Todd, we're going to have to probably apologize to you for ever writing such horrible comments about you and your decorations, because the Lincoln bedroom is considered to be a place where people love to go lay their head if they're ever so fortunate. All right, y'all, let's take it back now to where we are. Again, we now know what he thinks of us and of the way that we feel about our economy. And he said it's an A++ economy, obviously. So we should be loving it. Segment 2. Bored now? You're on peace and the art of not caring. So let's talk about the other thing our president finds boring. In case you missed it, and if you were paying attention to your grocery bill or your electric bill, I completely understand if you did miss this. The United States has been engaged in a military conflict with Iran since February of 2026. Our service members, our resources, our tax dollars, our strategic interest in the Middle East. And for weeks, both American and Iranian negotiating teams have been grinding through diplomatic talks to try and end this conflict, to reopen the Strait of Hormuz that was not even closed before the war, to get a ceasefire in place and set a timeline for nuclear negotiations. This is the kind of painstaking, exhausting diplomatic work that every president before this one understood was necessary. Not glamorous, not fun, but necessary. So last Monday, a CNBC reporter asked President Trump about the state of the negotiations with Iran. The reporter asked, "Do you think the negotiations are over now, or is this a bluff?" And the President of the United States of America, the Commander-in-Chief of the greatest military in the world, par none, said this: "I don't care if they ever, honestly. I really don't care. I could care less. If they're over, they're over. If they're not, I think they took it too much time. Frankly, I thought they started to get very boring." Boring. Peace negotiations. Boring. Iran's chief negotiator responded with a statement that their armed forces had rebuilt themselves during the ceasefire, and that if Trump restarted the war, it would be more crushing and bitter for America than the first day of the war. That is not boring, ladies and gentlemen. That is a threat. And the man we need handling the threat just told the world he couldn't care less. Folks, I want you to think about something. I am a Navy Fleet Marine Force corpsman. I have been in combat situations. I've been deployed countless times. I know men and women in uniform whose lives are on the line in that region right now. And the president of the country they serve, the person constitutionally responsible for their welfare, said the process of protecting them is boring. That is not how we think in Hardin County. We don't get to call things boring when lives are at stake. When you're deployed, when your buddy next to you is bleeding, when you're hours from home and scared out of your ever-loving mind, boring is a luxury you cannot afford. Donald Trump can afford boring. He's got a ballroom to think about. All right. So that brings us to our next segment, segment 3. The con job. Calling the rent check a hoax. So that's not a hoax to me, but again, here is the type of leader we're looking at. A leader.
Now at last, lo, I see Olympus, and a light from its summit doth illumine. I am one with the gods immortal. I am Nero, the artist, who creates with fire, that the dreams of my life may come true. To the flames now I give the past, to the flames and sun. Take now this road, oh, receive our glory.
So, does that remind you at all of the man who, during an important meeting in a White House press conference, kept getting up from his seat to go to look out the window at his ballroom? Reminds me an awful lot of that, y'all, if you've been paying attention. But again, I know that the bills are heavy, and a lot of us have not been able to pay attention to this man's shenanigans, but we have to. All right, before we go on, old guy in North Carolina says, it's not a renovation, just another distraction from the e-files, the corruption, and on and on and on. I could not agree with you more, old guy in North Carolina. So, now, we know that our builder-in-chief is just absolutely overcome with how important his building project is. And again, like we got old guy in North Carolina saying, this is absolutely a distraction from the e-files. But we'll come back to that because that's very important. But when we got renovations that have jumped up the cost of White House maintenance to where it's 866% more than it was in 2025 and far more than it was years before that, then guys, we're in trouble. So here we are. The con job, calling the rent check a hoax. All right, let's talk about your grocery bill. Because here's the thing. The President of the United States has looked at the people of this country directly in the face, as I showed you earlier, and told them their economic pain is a hoax, a Democratic scam, a con job. His exact words from a cabinet meeting, quoting here now. The word affordability is a con job by the Democrats. The word affordability is a Democrat scam, unquote. Now, I want to be clear about something. This is not a partisan talking point I'm giving you. This is just math. Grocery costs are up. Energy prices are up more than 12%. Gasoline is up nearly 19%. A carton of eggs today costs 138% more than it did 4 years ago. Nearly half of all Americans, 46%, say the current cost of living is the worst they can ever remember. Ever. And here's the part that should really wake people up. 37% of Trump's own voters say the exact same thing. His own voters, the people who put him back in office, more than a third of them say this economy is crushing them. And his response? He gave himself an A++++. You heard it. I showed you. On the economy. He told a crowd in Pennsylvania that prices are coming down tremendously. When a reporter asked about holiday shopping, he said, "Don't be dramatic. Don't be dramatic." That is the man building a $400 million ballroom that tells the single mom working 2 jobs in Elizabethtown, Kentucky, my neighbors, who can't afford her kids' school supplies, don't be dramatic. I'll tell you what dramatic looks like. Dramatic looks like tearing down a historic wing of the White House so you can host a 650-person gala and many more. Dramatic looks like calling your renovation a relaxation when working families are selling blood plasma. We don't have the luxury of calling our hardship a hoax here in Hardin County. Real people, real pain, and a president who says, we just made it up, y'all. Now, here's where the rubber hits the road. If you are going to say anything like I'm saying, you're now being labeled an enemy of the state. And I'm not using hyperbole here. But again, remember, we are now in the American history part where Nero just burns Rome and goes on ahead and sings about it.
As would a furnace burn on, oh ancient Rome, burn on, burn on!
Don't be those masses, y'all. Right now, if you're the masses reacting like that, oh yeah, here's what we're going to have coming. So, once again, if you are doing any work to call out the fact that Nero is singing and fiddling while Rome burns, then yeah, you are now being considered an enemy of the state for calling out the obvious. So this isn't a partisan talking point. This is absolute serious because folks here in Hardin County, they're not being dramatic when they talk about the cost of everyday living. But we have a president who says, we made it up. Our pain is not real. It's not real people that are feeling this. It's made up talking points and scams by Democrats. So here in segment 4, the enemies list. This is how a vengeance campaign fell apart and what comes next. Now, I want to spend some time on something that should concern every single person in this county, regardless of party, because this isn't about Democrat or Republican. This is about whether the justice system in this country should be used as a personal weapon by any president. When DJT, Captain Bone Spurs, came back into office, he made a promise. He promised retribution. He said his enemies would pay. And he has systematically used the Department of Justice of the USA, your Justice Department, funded with your tax dollars, to go after people he doesn't like. Let's go through the list. James Comey, the former FBI director, was indicted on 2 felony counts, lying to Congress, and obstruction. A federal judge threw the case out in November 2025, ruling that the prosecutor Trump's attorney general had installed was unconstitutionally appointed. A federal judge called her exactly what she was, an unlawfully placed Trump loyalist. The charges were dismissed. Letitia James, the attorney general of New York, the woman who went after Trump's real estate fraud, was indicted on federal charges of bank fraud. Her lawyer called it outrageous government conduct. Career prosecutors had refused to bring the case. Trump replaced them. And then a federal grand jury declined to re-indict her a second time. The case is dead. Adam Schiff, the California senator who led Trump's first impeachment, has been under investigation for mortgage fraud. His lawyer called the allegations transparently false, stale, and long debunked. As of today, no charges have been filed. Lisa Cook, a Federal Reserve governor, has been under criminal investigation for mortgage fraud. She is suing Trump over his attempt to fire her. The Supreme Court is considering the case. No conviction, no charges. She is still standing. Mark Kelly, the Arizona senator and astronaut and combat vet, was targeted as part of this same sweep. Investigations were opened. Nothing came of it. Jack Smith, the special counsel who actually did charge Trump, had to drop all his case because DOJ policy doesn't allow prosecuting a sitting president. Smith resigned. His own deposition, released at the end of 2025, reads accordingly. And please, let's all listen closely because this is important. His own deposition, which, again, he actually was the one who did charge Trump. Well, they had to drop his indictment. But his own deposition that was released at the end of 2025 reads, according to reporters who reviewed it, like a closing argument he never got to deliver. And now, let's go back to James Comey, because his second indictment was because as he was at the seashore on vacation, he came across someone who had gotten seashells and arranged them in an order to say to print out 8647. When I was in the Navy, if there was a flaming aircraft on the ship at sea, whenever metal burns, that aircraft metal burns, it is so hot that we have to jettison it overboard. If that aircraft is not jettisoned overboard, then just like the Forrestal, the USS Forrestal, where planes started cooking off back eons ago, well, actually right before I joined the Navy, then that burning metal is going to burn metal through the ship, and they're just going to start going from deck to deck to deck through that ship and burn it all the way down unless you jettison it overboard. And we call that 86ing it. So whenever something is dangerously on fire and about to take everybody down and kill everyone, we 86 the plane. Whatever is burning, we 86 it, throw it over into the ocean to put out the fire. It is not what Donald Trump had the DOJ claim it was. It was not a threat against 47. But they, again, took Comey to court for posting that on social media, said it was a threat to the POTUS, and yeah, that was tossed out quickly. Now, I'm glad that those are millionaires that those court cases are coming after, because could you and I afford that? No. Of course, breaking yesterday, June 4th, John Bolton. He had been indicted. Remember, this is an arch conservative, John Bolton. he served an administration of President 45, DJT, his first time around. But he stepped back and he had to basically realize that he was in over his head during 45's term and that 45 had gone off the rails. So he left the administration, previous administration, and then he went and had to write a book about it. I don't know. Of course, everybody wants to do that, right? Well, turns out he is actually the only one that this president has succeeded in burning down to just about to the ground, because he has pleaded guilty. This is a serious affair. So he pleaded guilty to taking some documents from his time in the White House administration, and apparently he was using them to write his tell-all book. And he's going to have to pay hundreds of millions of dollars, and it looks like he's going to have to do some jail time. So this is in the realm of very serious. So out of all these, this is the only one that they've managed to get. But Bolton is to pay $2.25 million, not hundreds of millions, but $2.25 million, faces up to 5 years in prison for retention of classified information. So out of all the people the president has used the DOJ to burn, this was the only one he's been successful with. That's a big success, he's going to say. So this is going to embolden him. He's going to be very emboldened to keep going after anybody that is his enemy. So, y'all, yeah, what are we going to do about this? What can we say? So, CBS, AP, and MS Now are all reporting that Bolton has agreed to plead guilty to a single reduced felony count of retaining classified national security information, and his plea hearing is set for June 26. Now, I want to be fair here. Retaining classified material, it's a very serious thing. If Bolton mishandled sensitive national security information, that needs to be addressed. I served in the military. I understand what classified means. And when I served in Homeland Security for a bit, which I did after I retired, I knew exactly what classified meant. But here's what I also need you to understand. The man who was originally indicted on 18 counts is pleading guilty to 1. That is the justice system working, forcing overreach to reveal itself. And it stands in stark contrast to the man who famously stored classified documents in a bathroom at Mar-a-Lago, in a ballroom, in a shower, and in a storage room, and paid no price at all. Here's the harder question. Will this one guilty plea, the first actual conviction in Trump's entire retribution campaign, will it be used to justify doubling down on everybody else? I'm sure it will, because I think you already know the answer. Because on the same day that Bolton's plea is being announced, Captain Bone Spurs, Diaper Don, announced that he is nominating his acting Attorney General, Todd Blanche, to become the permanent Attorney General of the United States. Todd Blanche. Let me tell you who Todd Blanche is if you've missed it. Todd Blanche was Donald Trump's personal defense attorney. He represented Captain Bone Spurs in the New York hush money trial. He was brought into the Department of Justice as Deputy Attorney General and elevated to acting attorney general after Pam Bondi was ousted, reportedly for failing to be aggressive enough in prosecuting Trump's enemies. We know that's why she left. But under Blanche's watch as acting attorney general, the Department of Justice has continued its pursuit of Trump's political adversaries. He is the man, just this past Tuesday, June 2nd, who sat before the House Appropriations Committee and told Congress that the DOJ had fully complied with the Epstein Files Transparency Act, a bipartisan law. We've talked about it. That's the law that Congressman Ro Khanna and Congressman Thomas Massie came up with and got passed. And that's why Thomas Massie is not going to be a Kentucky congressman after January. So a law that Trump himself signed. And Representative Madeleine Dean looked him in the eyes and said, there are 3 million more documents. 3 million. And do you know what Blanche told her? He said they were duplicative and that some of them involved another guy named Epstein. If y'all believe that, I've got some oceanfront property in Arizona I'd love to sell you. That is not transparency. That is obstruction dressed up in a fancy suit and tie. And it doesn't stop there. Former Attorney General Pam Bondi, in her own closed-door interview, invoked Blanche's name more than 30 times when asked about the Epstein files. She said she delegated oversight over this process to Blanche. 30 times. She pointed the finger at the man who is now being nominated to run the entire Justice Department. Democrats on the House Oversight Committee are demanding Blanche testify on the Epstein files under oath on video. As of now, the Republican-controlled committee has refused to make that happen. So here is where we are. The president's former personal lawyer, the man overseeing a retribution campaign against Trump's political critics, the man stonewalling the Epstein file investigation, is about to become the most powerful law enforcement officer in the United States of America. That is not a small thing, y'all. The United States Attorney General is supposed to represent you, not the president, not the president's enemy list, you and me. One former federal prosecutor told USA Today, watching the Comey and James case collapse, this is an embarrassment. I'll tell you what is beyond embarrassing, y'all. It's watching the man in charge of that embarrassment get promoted and handed even more power. Because in this country, we still have judges. We still have career prosecutors with spines. And we still have a constitution that doesn't bend to anyone's enemies list, not even a president's. But that Constitution, oh boy, y'all, it needs people in office at every level who take it seriously. In Hardin County, we understand something simple. The law is supposed to be blind. The moment it becomes personal, well, it just stops being law. And the moment that the Attorney General used to be your personal defense attorney, the moment that that person becomes the Attorney General, it stops being justice. All right, y'all. Next segment, the word count. What a man talks about, it tells you everything you need to know about that man. So I want to come back to something I said at the top of this episode because I mean it sincerely and I want you to think about it. Donald Trump has used the word ballroom more than he has used the word democracy. Look it up. Go through his speeches, his social media posts, all of his posts, his press. You know, he keeps on briefing the press. Does he ever talk about democracy? He talks about ballroom, ballroom, ballroom. The design, the size, the donor list, supposed, the architect, the timeline, the seating capacity, with a level of detail and genuine enthusiasm that never applies to the concept of self-governance. That's what democracy is, self-governance. He talks about what the gold trim will look like. He talks about, again, seating 650 people. He says it's going to be top of the line. He says he has an extraordinary eye for detail. And when it comes to democracy, to the institutions that protect the rights of the people in this country, he says they're boring. He calls them a hoax. He calls them a con job. He says, don't be dramatic. That is the man we have in the White House right now. Now, look, I'm not running for president. I'm running to be your magistrate right here in Hardin County Fiscal Court, District 3. That's Tunnel Hills and the communities all around it, all about it, all the way over to Colesburg, Youngers Creek, all the way down, go on down 62, take Mulberry, on down to the courthouse. District 3's got a pie over there. All the way over to Buffalo Lake, where I love to hike. That's why I had on my one of my chest packs for hiking today with the dogs. You know, that's tunnels, roads, bridges, and accountability at a local level. That's what running for magistrate is. But the connection matters because the values we hold here, work hard, tell the truth, treat people fair, show up when it's hard, those are not the values on display in Washington right now. And again, all the values of working hard, telling the truth, treating people fair, and showing up when it's hard, those are values that prop up life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And the people of this district, they deserve a representative who will bring those values to every level of government, starting right here at home. That's why I need you in November. Now, before I close, please, you all, share this channel. Hit like. Make some comments, at least 8 words or more. That gets my algorithm going. I've got to get the word out. I'm going out. I'm talking to y'all all over District 3, even areas that aren't District 3, just here in the county. And I love Hardin County. But we need accountability right here at home. All right, Saul. So here as we close, let me leave you with this. I went to the United States Navy because I believe in something that matters down to the marrow of me. I became a hospital corpsman. I insisted that be the job that I would do in the Navy or I wasn't going to join. In the Army, they call that a combat medic. I was a combat medic. Because when someone is hurt, you don't call it boring. You don't call it a hoax. You show up, you do the work, and you don't stop until the bleeding stops. Think about that. That's what I want to bring to Hardin County District 3. Not gold embroidery, not a ballroom, not an enemies list, just accountability, common sense, and someone who shows up for you. If you're in District 3, again, I need your vote. Talk to your neighbors, talk to your family. And if you're on the fence, if you've been a Republican voter your whole life who is tired of your grocery bill being called a con job, I want to talk to you too, especially you, because this district is bigger than one party. And so are the problems we face. Again, y'all, I am Spencer Keck. This is the Hillbilly Think Tank. And from right here in Tunnel Hills, Kentucky, you have been absolutely heard. Again, y'all, if you want to give me a call on this line here, this is my line for the show, and it is 606-253-9885. Let me make sure my ringer's not off since I haven't heard anybody calling. So I got the phone on. Yep, got it on. All right, y'all. And, you know, this county means everything, y'all. Old guy in North Carolina. Let me close with what you said. I'll tell you, Spencer, he's so far gone in his dementia. And like you say, he's destroyed our standing in the world and our economy. His followers even can see through his lies on this. Absolutely. Blessed Veteran, thanks for coming on. Thank you so much. Blessed Veteran says, thank you, brother. Thank you, Blessed Veteran, for coming on and listening tonight. Let's get the word out because, y'all, again, it is all about life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. It is about keeping our Kentucky motto as a real fact of life. United we stand, divided we fall. And we cannot be divided if we are loving our neighbors as ourselves and if we are recognizing daily that we are our brother's keeper and our sister's keeper. I recognize that, and I will do that for you here in District 3. Y'all, please remember everyone deployed. We've had hundreds of injuries in this war that's going on right now, and at least 15 fatalities, possibly more they're not telling us about. But we've had hundreds of injuries. We've got sailors not even being fed well in the ships. I've done a whole report on that. So remember everyone deployed. Bless your corazon. Have a great weekend. It's looking like it's coming to a good start. I got a good walk in with the dogs. I will leave you with that happy note here of what it looked like today to take the pups out for a beautiful hike in District 3. This is out there at Buffalo Lake Trail.
This person would like.
Yeah. Gotcha. Well, y'all, as you probably know, dog is just God spelled backwards. And yeah, they're amazing, beautiful things. They are my therapy. That's part of touching grass. Hopefully you guys get to do some of that this weekend. And don't let the fear of the ticks get to you like I was for a bit. We got to touch grass, enjoy life, enjoy the dogs, and bless one another.
Beans shipping cross country on refrigerated trucks. And third, they take all hand cooked and modern bush beans. In the 50s and 60s, convenience became king, and TV did not soaking overnight, got laid But here's what they didn't tell old-fashioned beans, it actually works. Your great-grandfather didn't grow salad runners because they were tender. He grew them because when the bank foreclosed on farms across the